Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's review of the Gilmore Girls. This is going to be my thoughts on episode 19 of the first series, Emily in Wonderland, and it is called that because Emily herself visits Star's Hollow. She takes maybe a too keen interest in Rory's life and wants to help her, like decorating, shopping, all that sort of thing. So things are kind of turned topsy turvy where an Emily takes a visit, and tensions grow between her and Lorelai. More on that later, but first of all, in one of the subplots, there's more bonding actually between Rachel and Lorelai unexpectedly over Luke. When Rachel shows Lorelai a cute romantic picture she took of her and Luke back at the festival.
I'm developing my pictures from the Firelight Festival, some amazing stuff. And I'm thinking maybe there's a book here, Faces of Small Town America.
You should feel safe. You don't live near these. Wow. When did you take this?
When you weren't looking.
What's that?
Oh, it's a picture of us.
Us?
Rachel took it.
For the Firelight Festival.
Oh, sure, yeah. So, here's your plate. No ice.
Thank you.
Do you wear contacts?
Me, no.
God, you've got amazing eyes, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah, sure, I guess. I mean they're, placed good. Symmetrical. Yeah, I'm gonna get some more coffee.
Oh, wow. Mom, look at this.
What is that?
It's an old abandoned inn I ran across when I was exploring the other day.
This is Dragonfly. I totally forgot about this place.
Classic awkward Luke in that scene. Nicely done. I have to say, actually, the photo, of course, jogs Lorelai's memory, not just of her feelings for Luke, maybe, but also the dragonfly and the desire to open up a hotel one day, which is something she follows through or starts to follow through later on in the episode with Suki. So that was quite nicely done. And yeah, her and Rachel slowly start to bond because Rachel decides that she actually wants to stay in town and that she starts asking Lorelai's advice. And I think at first Lorelai is being a bit off with her because when she compliments her on Rory and what a great kid she is, Lorelai is like a bit sarcastic with her. She feels a bit stand up, but over time they sort of grow, and I think Lorelai generally is being quite nice to her about Luke and quite encouraging. And there's a discussion later on with Lorelai and Luke where Luke is pointing out about Rachel's past and how she has a fear of commitment or doesn't stick around long. And I think that's a nice like reversal of the gender stereotype. I think you can see as a female showrunner here the fact that normally it would be like the guy fear of commitment, and they don't do that. I think progressive and quite a nice touch. And as I said in a previous review, I actually really like the fact that Rachel's pretty decent. She's actually quite likable and isn't like a bitch to Lorelai or Rory. I think sometimes that is the stereotype then, because ultimately we're sort of rooting for Lorelai and Luke to get together, or there's a bit of a potentially love triangle there. Then it's sort of easy to make the outsider like unlikable. So I really like then they don't do that. So Lorelai, as I said, sort of speaks up for Rachel when it comes to Luke. Makes it clear she wants to stay in town. So I'm not upset about that. I'm actually quite liking Rachel as a character. So that's all nicely done, and I thought it was quite nicely done the way those photographs sort of set things in motion with those two plots, and Lorelai and Suki starting their own like hotel is like really exciting stuff. Actually, that's some of the best stuff maybe from the early seasons. Speaking of that, there's sort of a gem of a subplot where Rune, who's Jackson's brother, you may remember him from a previous episode where they had like that disastrous double date. The actor I really like. He's one of those sort of good character actors. And just for a bit of note, he played Whistler in Buffy. It's him, and he wants Lorelai to give Rune a job, which she reluctantly does to try and get him back on his feet. And there's ulterior motives because Rune's been staying with her and Jackson and driving Sookie up the wall, so she wants him to get a job, get a bit of money so he can get his own place. So that's the whole thing. And one of the best lines in the episode is actually Michelle being like really snobby towards him when he shows up for work. He calls him like Tiny Tim or Tiny Tommy, something like that. So classic snobbery from Michelle. Absolutely glorious. And of course, the main sort of plot, the main bulk is with Emily visiting Stars Hollow. Easy to forget, but is really good. Is like her visiting Lane's Antiques with Rory, and I guess it's not surprising in a way. It makes sense. Then her and Mrs. Kim, they just seem like so unlikely bedfellows that they actually do get along, and you can see why, because they're both really stubborn. They're both kind of snobberish, and they just bond essentially over their like sort of mutual sort of like stubbornness, if you like, and waiting for Henry to call. Like he hasn't called her in weeks since that date apparently, and so that's sort of bubbling along as well. But there's some good stuff with Emily and Rory in this episode, but of course we see the best and the worst of Emily in this episode. The best is one of the greatest lines ever from her and delivery when she's essentially trying to fit in and be really like cool with Rory. So she asks her musical advice, and she asks about what about that group, the Backside Boys. Yes, Emily said the Backside Boys. At the, classic song there. Everybody rock your body from the Backside Boys. That's never gonna get old. That's some really amusing stuff because Emily's just asking about different groups, and Lane's helping Rory out with like musical advice at one point. It's a whole thing between Lorelai and Emily is when this old place where they used to stay when they first moved there, and when obviously early on when Lorelai first had Rory, and Emily is like really upset over this because she sees that they were, I guess in her mind, like living in squalor, and that it's like from her point of view, she's like, well, she'd rather you live like this than actually take our money and let us help you out. And so she rings up Lorelai at one point, really sort of irate, and they sort of have it out. And obviously she doesn't really understand that Lorelai wanted her independence. She wanted to help Rory, and although you can sort of see where Emily is coming from, at the same time, people do need to stand on their own 2 feet, and I think it's definitely understandable where Lorelai was coming from because it was a bad situation. She had a kid at a young age, and then the relationship broke down, and there was a lot of pressure from the parents. So I think definitely you can see that. But I think it does a good job of actually like you see Lorelai as like this working class mum, or trying to be more working class and move into this more modest, like small off the beatnik town, and yeah, building her own life. And that's why actually the whole dream of owning her own inn and the sort of the start of that in this episode with Sookie is really, really nicely done and continues to kind of build that legacy. And it's that sort of thing that grounds Lorelai, I think, and makes her a really likeable character. So yeah, another solid episode, good fun. That's Emily in Wonderland, and just 2 more episodes left now in this season, so really cracking up. And yeah, solid stuff again. So I'll be back with more Gilmore Girls soon. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.